I have ranked every position on offense and defense, so now it's time to do another mock draft. With less than 2 weeks until the draft, rumors are starting to arise and teams are starting to lock in their picks. So let's predict those. If you're new, subscribe to the channel as I will be releasing draft content all year long. But for now, I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and welcome to 2024 NFL Mock Draft 5.0. Enjoy. At first overall, the Chicago Bears are up. There's no need for commentary. Caleb Williams, let's move on. Then we get to second overall. Adam Schefter recently doubled down that Jayden Daniels is likely the pick here, but with both Drake May and Jayden Daniels visiting the Commanders this week, I think it's still a toss-up. And I love Drake May as a prospect, and I'm not nearly as high on Jayden Daniels as most people are. So until I receive a certain statement that Daniels is going second overall, the pick for me is Drake May. That brings us to the New England Patriots, who have a decision to make. I've seen a lot of trade down opportunities for them in the media lately, and with them desperately needing a quarterback, they could get one of those mid-pack guys in Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. I still do think they stay at pick 3, and despite the rise of JJ McCarthy on draft boards, I'm sticking with Daniels to New England at pick 3. Another trade down candidate elevates itself at pick 4 with the Arizona Cardinals, and it's a very interesting one this time. Arizona does not need a quarterback, so a team like the New York Giants or the Minnesota Vikings could leap up to get McCarthy. Instead, I think Arizona stays. They have a lot of needs overall and could benefit from trading down, especially with the Vikings, as that would give them 3 first-round picks. But it's hard to pass up on generational talent Marvin Harrison Jr. That's who they take at 4. And here we are with another trade down candidate, the Los Angeles Chargers. With the rise of JJ McCarthy on boards, they could use this as an opportunity to get more draft capital and still get the positions they need. And that's exactly what they do. The Minnesota Vikings trade up here, getting pick 5 and surrendering picks 11 and 23 to Los Angeles. It's hard to ignore all of the rumors of McCarthy going to Minnesota, and that's who they decide to go with. 4 of the first 5 picks are quarterbacks this year. And then we have the New York Giants at pick 6, who are bigger trade-up candidates than trade-down candidates, but obviously they can't trade up anymore. They are also a team that could take a quarterback, but I see them potentially trading up later to do so. At pick 6, there are several options for New York, whether that means taking an offensive tackle and pushing Evan Neal to the inside, that could mean taking the first corner off the board very high, or that could mean going wide receiver, which I do think they do by taking LSU's Malik Neighbors. We move on to 7th overall, and the Tennessee Titans have this pick straightforward. Sure, they have needs at wide receiver and edge rusher, but with every team up to this point passing on Notre Dame offensive tackle Joe Alt, I think the Titans have it laid out for them. Alt goes number 7. The Atlanta Falcons have an interesting decision to make at 8th overall. They are in pretty good need of a wide receiver and a corner, but Alabama edge rusher Dallas Turner has been the consensus pick up to this point. I know they need edge rusher, but is Turner worth taking this high, and is he worth being the first defensive player off the board? That is a huge question to ask, but this isn't a personal mock, these are predictions. So I'm going with Turner at pick 8 for Atlanta. The Bears have their second pick here, and honestly, this is also a huge trade down spot for Chicago. They do have Rome Odunze on the board, and they could go with him as their wide receiver 3, but that's stunting the growth of their younger guys, and that'll bring down the possibility of Keenan Allen signing an extension. Alongside that, I've thought for months that this second pick will be an edge rusher. With Turner off the board, the team could definitely trade down for someone, but I actually think they stay and select UCLA edge rusher Laiatu Latu 9th overall. Wrapping up the top 10, the New York Jets had things planned out for them until they signed both Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Taking offensive tackle out of the picture actually makes this harder, as they now have to decide whether or not to surround Aaron Rodgers or to bolster their defense and continue the trend of defensive players going off the board. I think they choose to surround Rodgers, but not with Rome Odunze. Instead, they select Georgia tight end Brock Bowers, the first tight end off the board. The trade down situation works great for the Chargers, as their first pick of this mock is now up. Their biggest need, in my opinion, is wide receiver, and with 3 guys at the top of the board, they could take one. If all of them are off the board, they could still go with defensive tackle here and then go with wide receiver at pick 23. But Washington wideout Rome Odunze is still on the board, and it will be hard to pass him up at pick 11. As we venture into the quarterback needy Denver Broncos at pick 12, there's a very intriguing question that comes up. Bo Nix has been mocked here for a while, but Michael Penix Jr. is starting to go up on the consensus boards, and he has actually passed Nix. I'm also higher on Penix than I am on Nix, so the Washington quarterback being the pick here is a large possibility. But I'm going to go with where most people are and just take Oregon's Bo Nix 12th overall. Then we move on to another team that could go with quarterback in Las Vegas. They honestly have a bunch of needs, one being quarterback, but also having offensive tackle, cornerback, and defensive tackle. There are a lot of possible options for Vegas, and I've seen a lot of Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Talisa Fuaga, Byron Murphy II, and more. But with Penn State offensive tackle Olu Fashanu still on the board here, that's the direction I go in for pick 13. And then New Orleans comes up, and honestly, their pick is very straightforward. If they picked in the top 10, it might not be as obvious, but with 5 quarterbacks off the board and the top 3 wide receivers all gone, this pick should definitely be offensive tackle, especially when noting that Oregon State's Talisa Fuaga is still available. So it's Fuaga to New Orleans. The Colts come in with a solid chunk of needs, and here they are broken down. At tight end, they could go with Brock Bowers, but with him off the board, there's no point in going that route. At linebacker, there aren't particularly any linebackers worth taking this high, and the same goes for safety, but they can stay in the defensive back room and take a corner. There are a bunch of options, including a great scheme fit in Nate Wiggins, an intriguing prospect in Cooper DeJean, a combine winner in Terrion Arnold, or they go with my selection in Toledo's Quinyon Mitchell. He goes 15th overall in this mock. The Seattle Seahawks come in at pick 16, and I still think they are a sneaky quarterback team. I'm not going to roll with that though. Seattle needs edge, interior O-line, defensive tackle, cornerback. They have a lot of needs, and they also have a lot of options. Jackson Powers Johnson could make history. Jared Verse could be the 3rd edge off the board. Terrion Arnold or Cooper DeJean could make it back-to-back corners. But I like Byron Murphy II being the first defensive tackle off the board, as he goes 16th overall to the Seahawks. 16 picks down, 16 picks to go. We haven't had a mock trade since the Chargers traded down from 5th overall, so why don't we switch it up a little bit? If you've been a fan of my channel, you would know that this isn't the first time I've mocked a Philadelphia Eagles trade up with Jacksonville. In this trade scenario, the Eagles get picks 17 and 96, and the Jaguars get 22, 53, and a 2025 4th round selection. With the Eagles in this situation, they would fairly obviously be trading up for someone who they think is their guy, and assuming other teams ahead of them could take cornerback, which they can, including Jacksonville taking one, they jump up to get their guy, and I think Iowa corner Cooper DeJean would be their corner. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals at 18th overall, they also have a very straightforward selection, but it's less because they desperately need it and more because they don't have many needs whatsoever. They could go with Jerzon Newton to bolster up the trenches on the defensive end, but I actually think they bolster them on the opposite side of the ball, taking Alabama right tackle J.C. Latham with the 18th overall pick. Again, this pick is pretty straightforward. I am so shocked that the Los Angeles Rams did as well as they did in 2023, but at the same time, they do have Sean McVay, so I'm not shocked. But I say that because this team has so many holes in so many positions. They could genuinely go with offensive tackle or any position on defense, and it would not be a bad selection here. But there's one position that sticks out more to me, and that's edge rusher. For the same reasons that I had Latu going to Chicago with 9th overall, the Rams take Florida State edge Jared Verse at pick 19, and they even receive inside-outside versatility if Verse does not work out as that number 2 edge rusher beside Byron Young. Another team that could take a lot of different positions comes up with Pittsburgh at pick 20. Wide receiver, O-line, linebacker, corner, they're all decent enough needs where at pick 20, I would not be shocked if any of those positions are selected here. I originally had them taking Troy Fautanu for their new left tackle or Amarius Mims, allowing for them to kick Broderick Jones out to left tackle. But instead, I switched over to corner, and I have them taking Alabama's Terrion Arnold, as there are a lot of top-notch corners left that would be very hard to pass on. Then moving on to the Miami Dolphins, they are a massive trade down candidate due to the limited amount of needs they have on their squad. So as a result, I'm going to have them trade down. I like the Arizona Cardinals using their second first-round pick to trade back up into the round. In the process, they give up picks 27, 104, and 186, helping Miami grab some crucial draft capital for depth. With Arizona back on the clock, they already got a generational wide receiver, so why not give them my number 1 corner in this draft class? He's 4th according to consensus, but Clemson corner Nate Wiggins would be a phenomenal addition for this Arizona squad. So Jacksonville is back on the clock, and with 3 corners going off the board since they traded down, their only option there would be to go for Kool-Aid McKinstry. And while I think that isn't a bad idea by any means, I think they have better options. They did a very good job at filling holes in free agency, and while Eric Armstead was a great signing, I still think they could do more on the interior D-line, especially noting Armstead's age. Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton is still on the board, so Jacksonville takes him with 22nd overall. The third straight pick that is different from what currently stands is the second first-round pick that the Chargers received by trading down with Minnesota. Their number 1 priority here was to get a defensive tackle, but unfortunately, both Murphy and Newton went off the board before 23. There is still another option though, and that means giving up Trey Pipkins. I like the idea of drafting a guard and kicking Jamari Salyer out to right tackle, but keeping him at guard and taking Georgia offensive tackle Amarius Mims is not a bad idea. So that's my pick at 23. The Dallas Cowboys have so many needs that should be filled in this draft. The only issue, a lot of their needs don't involve players who are worth being taken at 24th overall. Luckily for them, there is one player that plays in a position that normally would not be worth taking at 24, but he's a one-of-a-kind prospect. Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson is who I'm talking about, and that's the pick for Dallas at pick 24. Green Bay at 25 has been one pick that I've been super back and forth on. Originally, I had them taking Amarius Mims, but I may have underestimated how good Zach Tom is. Then I switched to Quinyon Mitchell, who obviously has been taken at this point, and Kool-Aid McKinstry would be a fine pick for them too. But then they let go of David Bakhtiari, and I had them trading up and taking J.C. Latham, moving Tom over to the left side. But now, I have another first-timer pick, not in terms of him being an offensive tackle, but in terms of him being a pure left tackle. Washington tackle Troy Fautanu is the selection here for Green Bay at 25. Tampa Bay has been another team that I've been back and forth on, as I had them taking Jared Verse. But honestly, I've strayed away from that, as I think he needs to go to a team that will start him at outside linebacker. He's also off the board, so that doesn't help. Anywho, they loaded up the secondary in the offseason, signing Tavier Thomas, Jordan Whitehead, and Bryce Hall, but I don't think that's enough. They need an immediate starting cornerback, and I think Alabama corner Kool-Aid McKinstry provides Tampa with that opportunity. He's the 26th overall pick. Miami is back on the clock after they traded down from 21, and now they have a fun spot to be in. I originally had Miami being the first team to take linebacker, but they signed Jordan Brooks and Anthony Walker this offseason. With linebacker off the board, I don't think they have a position that they need to address in the first round. A lot of people say offensive line, and while I don't see offensive tackle, I think they can take a guy who can play everywhere. Duke offensive lineman Graham Barton is the consensus pick at 21, but they are able to snag him here at 27. The Buffalo Bills have not been a winner this offseason. They have lost a lot of guys for cap reasons, and all of their signings outside of maybe Mike Edwards aren't big splash signings. So they come into the draft with more needs than expected, but especially at wide receiver. I'm sorry, but if you lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, you can't replace them with only Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins. They need a high-end draft prospect at that position. There hasn't been a wide receiver taken since 11th overall, and Brian Thomas Jr. is a fantastic pick for this Buffalo offense. With how everything has unfolded so far, the Detroit Lions are in a very tough spot. But even then, they filled up their needs extremely well, and just like Miami, they don't have any position that they need to address in the first round. Honestly, I felt like this pick in Minnesota safety Tyler Nubin was a reach, not because of the value, but because safety isn't a massive need. Nonetheless, I like the pick. The Baltimore Ravens went into free agency with a lot of guys to re-sign, and they came out with a good roster anyways, at least in my opinion. They need more depth than starting positions, but there are two positions that need immediate help: wide receiver and right tackle. With many of the remaining tackles being left side guys, I'm going to narrow it down to wide receiver, specifically either one of the two Texas wideouts. While Xavier Worthy would be very interesting, Adonai Mitchell is the safer pick and is my selection here. San Francisco has one job and one job only in this draft: bolster up that offensive line. I could see a trade up in order to get a better prospect, but in this case I have them staying and keeping the draft capital that they have. I'm not a huge fan of the selection of Arizona tackle Jordan Morgan, primarily because I would love Graham Barton to San Fran. But if they need to settle for it, it's not a bad idea to throw him at right tackle to pair with Trent Williams. With the final pick in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft, I think it's fairly obvious that the Chiefs go with wideout, especially if only 5 of them have been taken up to this point. You have Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey, even Keon Coleman isn't bad. But how electric would Texas wideout Xavier Worthy be? We saw how elite Mahomes was with the top-notch speed guy. Maybe he can do it again, especially if Rashee Rice is gone. Worthy goes 32nd. Well, that is my 5th 2024 NFL mock draft. Do you agree with my mock? What selections would you change? Let me know in the comments section below. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.